Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. Monday night. What's up, crew? How are you?
What up?
Get on to the topic. It's all about soundtracks, our favorite soundtracks tonight. Soundtrack albums, courtesy of Mr. Lasante, who is, whoops, over this way. I guess I'm never in this side of the Zoom.
He's right there for me. No, there
Everywhere.
he is.
Up, down, left, right.
I'm usually always, when we do the Zooms, I'm always in the top left according to what I'm looking at. So this is the first time I'm on the right, which is really bizarre. But
You're on my top left, actually. I see if you're over there for me.
Oh, you're over here.
something like that over there. Anyway, Rob Lasante in the house. Chris Allo's here. Craig Kaminsky's here. Karen La Preziosa's here. And The Rock is here. Ryan Scow. What's going on, folks?
What
What's
up?
going on,
Count
everybody?
Ralph is joining us. He's having some IT difficulties. So some tech difficulties. Hopefully he hops on soon. Anyway, so this, like I said, Rob suggested this topic. We're talking about our favorite soundtrack albums. You know, we're trying to keep it somewhat rock oriented, but we may have some stuff that really isn't because there's some great soundtracks that aren't really rock oriented. And I guess we've all picked out our favorite 5 or so. So we'll go. We don't have to go too much in depth in some of these albums, but basically why we picked them, why we like them. And since this was his topic, we'll have Rob kick us off. Do we want to go three picks, one trip around the squares, and then our final 2 in the second trip around? So Rob, your first 3.
First 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I'm making it too confusing. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah,
that's
you
all
said
right.
you said 3 earlier today, and I guess
I
now
got 4.
5.
I can only
I'm
count
gonna-
this far.
I got
4,
5.
so.
I got 5. So.
Whatever you got. Whatever you got.
All right. So, soundtracks for me, I've always liked soundtracks. Not just rock. I was telling the guys and Karen before we started that I always like whether it be Star Wars. We were discussing Star Wars and soundtracks like that I grew up with that have a lot of memories for me as a kid. So, but also with those memories, there's a lot of things like now that I'm older, and this first soundtrack I'm going to give you, it actually has a lot of old music. And when I first saw this movie, I was blown away by all the old songs on here. And that's Guardians of the Galaxy. And Guardians of the Galaxy has got all the the 70s, mostly 70s, I guess, right? Pretty much, Hooked on a Feeling and Jackson 5 and let's see, we got Redbone, Come and Get Your Love, Cherry Bomb, Runaways. And
That Redbone song rules. Just want to say that.
so I remember because I took my granddaughter to see this movie, right? And she even said, "I love this music." I'm like, "Do you even know who these? You weren't even thought about, And it's like, but a lot of the kids, they love this soundtrack too, and my granddaughters both love it a lot. And that's what I'm trying to say. For me, with some soundtracks have meanings like that, family and going to the movies. Because when I was a kid, we used to go, me, my sister, my dad, always go to the movies together. We saw all the Star Wars, for example, down in the city at the Ziegfeld and all that. So there's a lot of memories with soundtracks. And for me now, I'm making memories with my grandkids, and stuff. So for me, this is a pretty, I just like it. I like the soundtrack to that. My second pick tonight, I'm gonna make this quick, is from what the hell year was this? 1980, I think 2 or 3, and that's Legend, Tangerine Dream. They did all the music on this album. I actually have there's the DVDs. I actually have physical media, and I just love everything about this soundtrack. It's eerie. It's got what do you call it? What's the name of the song here I got on here? Like goblins, goblins. That whole song is really cool. Love by the Sun, which John Anderson does with Tangerine Dream on here, is a great song. There's just a lot of great stuff on here that I love. And if you've never seen Legend, it's with Tom Cruise and I think was it Mia Sara, and it's a awesome movie. It's before all the other stuff came out, like Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. It was a fantasy movie, like Crow and movies like that. But the soundtrack for this to me is really brings the movie up front. You know, I just love the soundtrack. I've always had a love for this movie and for the soundtrack, as corny as that may be. So that's my second pick. Third pick, of course, I think everybody knows this one, and that's Heavy Metal, 1981. I saw this in the theater. I figured some of us were going to have this. This is you know, you have on here, you have, of course, there's so many great songs on here, you know, Blue Oyster Cult, you have Cheap Trick, you have Don Felder, you have Nazareth, Journey. I know a lot of people don't like Journey, but and of course Mob Rules. That whole section is awesome. And then you got people on here like Harold Ramis and John Candy and Joe Flaherty, who we just lost recently. I mean, all the voices and everything, the animation on this is great. So the music going along with this was one of those things for me growing up. You know, how old was I? 1981. I was 19. And I probably saw this 2 or 3 times in the theater. That's how much I liked it and how much I liked the movie. So, and that's why I also have that too. So those are my 3 picks.
What's amazing is that, you know, you got all these great rockin' songs on there, and, you know, I have no issue with Journey being on this soundtrack, but Open Arms.
Yeah, but
I always thought that was
I always think of Harry Canyon screwing the broad with the big boobs by the refrigerator, because that's when they play Open Arms.
That's true.
Start-
That's the only
Stars and
bad thing
Stripes.
about the vinyl version is you can't skip songs on the vinyl, and I
Start-
fucking hate that song.
Giving her stars and stripes for.
Hey, Rob, I was 10 when Heavy Metal came out. I saw it in the theater that's no longer there, across the street from your house. I saw it at the beach shopping
At the beach
center.
shopping center?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you know what? My wife told me about that place. That's way before my time, but
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
But
Yeah.
what also makes the heavy metal soundtrack so great is that some of these songs are alternate versions of
Yep.
what turned up on the album.
Yeah.
Famously, the Black Sabbath Mob Rules
Rules, yeah.
song is slightly different than the studio version. The Sammy Hagar heavy metal version
Yeah.
is not the same from the Standing Hampton version on his albums. There's also exclusive songs that were on here that didn't turn up on the artist's albums at the time. The 2 Cheap Trick songs aren't on any of their albums. The 2 Don Felder songs,
Yeah.
the 2 Riggs songs are not on their album. Even the Stevie Nicks song, I believe that was released on remastered versions of Belladonna,
Later on,
but it wasn't on
Yeah.
the original.
wasn't on Belladonna, no.
Yeah, but I mean, some of these are the same ones: Grand Funk Railroad, Journey, Blue Oyster Cult. But it's really cool. Nazareth is a non-LP song that's not on their 1980 or 81 album from the time. So it's really cool that there's exclusive. These are exclusive ones that came out at the time.
Is there any story at all about the fact that Blue Oyster Cult had a song called Heavy Metal Black and Silver on Fire of Unknown Origin, and why that wasn't on this soundtrack?
I just read that it said that the song "Vengeance the Pact" was supposed to be used in the movie, but that supposedly the writers said the lyrics to that song encapsulated that whole segment, so that they didn't use that, and they just used "Veteran of the Psychic Wars" instead.
Which is a great song. But yeah, if you read the lyrics to the Vengeance the Pact, it's the whole last sequence in the movie.
Yeah.
Like they just literally tell you what happens.
With
Great
most
song,
of these
too.
things, the producers ask the bands for a few songs, and then they'll pick. So, you know, famously, it's off topic, but not, when the producers of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 you're getting their movie together. They went to 3 bands. They went to Dokken, Dio, and Black Sabbath, and they went with Dream Warriors from Dokken. But that's why Dream Evil has a couple Dream songs, and Black Sabbath Eternal Idol has, I think, Nightmare, and I think is it Lost Forever? There's 1 or 2 tracks there that they, you know, wrote and submitted, and producers went with Dokken, which honestly in 1987 was probably the right choice. But yeah, so that's, yeah, same thing with BOC. Yeah. They wrote a couple songs, and I guess producers liked Veteran of the Psychic Wars the best.
It is the
I
best.
never heard that story, Chris. Thanks.
It is the best song of those. But I mean, Fire Run on Orange is a great album, so
Yeah,
you can't go wrong.
sure. All right, cool. Chris, move over to you.
All right. At the bottom is a movie. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I've bought this a million times. and the soundtrack is, I think, the only one that of on my list that is actually has like well-known rock songs. But the soundtrack is a mix of classic orchestral sort of synth rock and hard rock and metal and alternative, and it's Demons. I couldn't find. I have multiple soundtrack copies, but my my CDs are not in as good a order as my movies, so I said, "Fuck it," I just grabbed this. But yeah, it's got Motley Crue, Billy Idol, Saxon, Scorpions, Accept, The Cult, and some great stuff from orchestral songs from Claudio Simonetti, the great Italian composer who was a part of Goblin. That's on my. Speaking of which, my next one would be the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack from Goblin.
Fuck yeah.
Italian prog rock masters who really made quite an impression working with Dario Argento and scoring, Deep Red and Suspiria and Dawn of the Dead, which is my my all-time favorite horror film. And I just in May I went to go see Goblin play the entire live score to Dawn of the Dead while the film played. I just love it to death. And then my next one, another similar one. I've seen this performer live several times. I was really bummed because he played Maryland Death Fest 2 years ago, and I was there, but he played the Wednesday night. But he is coming back in the fall to do another North American tour this year, and it's Fabio Frizzi. He's coming over with his live band, and he did my favorite score of his is Lucio Fulci's Zombie, and he will be playing with he's coming with his full band from Italy. He'll be playing the entire score to Zombie live while the film plays.
Chris, I got tickets for that.
Oh, for the Brooklyn one?
No, the one upstate New York in Albany.
I wanted to do that one, but Craig and I have another show, so I might be doing the Brooklyn one.
But I couldn't.
I
agree with everything you said. That's my favorite soundtrack that he did. I love that movie.
Oh, it's amazing.
One of my favorite Fulci movies. So
yeah, I've seen him twice before. And my wife was just saying a couple years ago, and she is not a big horror fan, and she fucking hates Italian horror films because they don't make sense. But one of the best concerts she ever went to was probably like 8 or 10 years ago. They played The Beyond, and Fabio Frizzi came over in Albany with his whole band.
Love that movie.
Played the live score, and she was just telling her sister today, she's like, I don't even like the movie, but watching the band somehow sync up to the movie for 90 minutes and play was just incredible. So
yeah, it really elevates the experience.
Absolutely, it's worth
Especially
seeking out.
It's different, but it's similar. But Chris, I'm sure you went a couple times when John Carpenter played.
Yes,
and he plays the soundtrack, the scores to like They Live, the thing.
100%.
And it was fucking amazing. Like I saw him 3 times, and every time I'm sitting there like, yeah, this is like 100 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, all these people, Fabio Frizzi, Goblin, John Carpenter, never in a million years did I think you would ever be able to see, basically film scores played live.
It was amazing.
Crazy,
it's incredible. Yeah. I saw they didn't play the movie really, but I saw when Fabio Frizzi played Maryland Death Fest.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever year it was, and it was
I
fucking awesome.
It was the year, whatever the last one that I went to was, which was the year they had Triptychon and Hellhammer.
Yeah.
I think that was 2023 or 2022. I can't remember.
My brain's mush. If you say it, I believe it. But yeah.
Yeah, but Fabio Frizzi played like how it's like the fest is like 4 or 5 nights. He played the first night before I got to Baltimore. So it was like,
that's why I went that first night, just mainly to see him and
totally. But
and
great show.
The scene in Demons where they're on the motorcycle with and they play Fast as a Shark by Accept. That's like one of the greatest things in cinema.
100%. Yeah, Dario Argento is a huge heavy metal fan. So for several of his movies, including the Demons film, which he didn't direct but he did produce, yeah, they put a lot of hard rock and metal in it.
That was great.
Cool. Got some good picks so far. Ryan, over to you.
All right. Well, first one, I'll just get it out of the way because we talked about it. I'm sure we'll get talked about again, but I don't give a fuck. Great. Yeah, heavy metal. Great one. Obviously, I've always heard. I know I know the reason, but people every now and then like, why does it say heavy metal when there's not really any metal on the soundtrack? Well, it's because it's based on the fucking comic book from France, you know, blah blah blah. And there's nothing to originally do with like heavy metal, the music. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, everything you guys said is true. And in my case, I like a lot of these alternate versions more. Like I didn't hear the Sammy Hagar version from his album until years later. I don't like that one. It's too kind of mellow and it's like that all the edges are sanded down. But the version on this the version of heavy metal on this is great. My favorite Don Felder song, heavy metal, Taking a Ride. It's my favorite Stevie Nicks song, Blue Lamp. Yeah, in some cases, my favorite Cheap Trick song, Reach Out. It's actually where I first got into Blue Oyster Cult when I was pretty young. I mean, I'm sure I heard, you know, some of the radio hits, but when I bought the soundtrack and saw the movie and I was like 16 or 17 and I heard Veteran of the Psychic Wars, I'm like, something about this band. I'm into it. Yeah. And obviously I kind of like the version of Mob Rules on this a little more than on Mob Rules, but you know, they're both fucking awesome. So yeah, great album. Great soundtrack. Next one is I don't know if anyone's going to mention this, but this is definitely a classic to me. And I like it a lot. Not only is it a great soundtrack and a great movie and a great 70s film, but the soundtrack marries up to the film in a way that usually isn't the case here. Brian De Palma movie, Paul Williams, and it is Phantom of the Paradise. Which is basically, to me, it's like you took Phantom of the Opera and you compacted about a cubic ton of cocaine into it and you pressed it down into a DVD or a VHS, you get this movie. 1974, I want to say, 1974. You know, much like Phantom of the Opera, it's very musically oriented, but set in a very, very 70s style. And it has, I mean, Karen's laughing, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
It's
Just a great movie. It's funny as fuck. Paul Williams rules. It's just, I love it. I watch it at least once a year. Really, really enjoy it. And so the different musical scenes have bands, musical acts playing the songs on the soundtrack, and then they put them all together, and there's your soundtrack. So it kind of goes through a whole slew of different styles. You have kind of like a Slade, David Bowie, 70s glam stuff, and there's one band that does like this Beach Boys, like you know, surf rock, and then you know it goes through all these different themes and stuff. It's great movie. You never seen it? It's my favorite Brian De Palma movie. Sorry for Scarface fans, but yeah, really like it. Great soundtrack. And the third one, I just thought of it a second ago, and I can't believe I forgot it. Maybe my favorite movie, maybe top 3 favorite movies of all time. Also 1970s. It's got some rock. You know what? I'm gonna push it here. There's no rock on this, but I don't give a fuck. I love it so much, and it's the topic. The soundtrack to Clockwork Orange.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It just popped in my head. I'm like, oh, I gotta mention this because this soundtrack has been welded into my head since I first saw this movie. I remember I was in high school, and a guy that would later go on to join the Marines, and I lost track of him. He comes in one day and hands me a VHS in a brown paper bag. And he's like, "Don't tell anybody, just watch this." I'm like, "What is this, like a fucking snuff film?" What are you giving me? He's like, don't say nothing, just go home and watch it, and don't let like your parents or nobody see it. So I did, thinking I was getting some illicit shit. Well, it's kind of a hardcore, intense movie, but ended up watching it, loved it, became one of my favorite movies. You know, my favorite Kubrick movie. Kubrick did many great movies, but yeah, the soundtrack, which I bought for $1 at some record store in Brooklyn a couple of years ago. Sleeves kind of beat up, but the record's in mint condition. Great gatefold. Yeah.
Ludwig van.
A little bit of the old Ludwig van. Yeah. Love it. And again, the way the soundtrack kind of like incorporates into the movie, like these different songs, like the way they work into different scenes. It's just masterful. Really good stuff. So that is my third pick for now.
All right. Karen.
Okay. Well, see where the show is going. So my number 1 pick, I'm going to make it my last one. But I felt like I really had to include it because the movie, it's just as much a part of the movie as anything else. And that is Woody Allen's Manhattan. It's all George Gershwin, and it is such a part of the movie that I just don't think you can have it. Really, it wouldn't have the same impact as, you know, if those songs weren't in there. They're beautiful melodies. There's some jazz trio and jazz quartet. There's no vocals. It's all instrumental, but they're just such beautiful songs. And in the opening scene where they play the beginning of Rhapsody in Blue, it's in black and white. And George Gershwin was born in New York City, and that the beginning of that song is shows the hustle and bustle of New York, and how everything is moving, constant movement. And at the end of the movie, when he doesn't get the girl, that beautiful melody of Rhapsody in Blue comes in, and then we see another cityscape where it's just the skyline and just epic photos and stills of bridges, the sun coming over the city, over the park. It's just beautiful. And like I said, it's such a part of this movie that I just can't see Manhattan having the same impact without this soundtrack. So I felt it was imperative, and it was important to talk about. I mean, if you like movies, then you know what I'm talking about. So that being said, I'm gonna go. My next one is, gee whiz, I have so many here. Rock and Roll High School. Roger Corman and the Ramones. It's like made for me, right? Classic Ramones songs. Not only the Ramones, it's Devo, one of my favorite songs from Devo, MC5, Paul McCartney, Todd Rundgren, Nick Lowe, Brian Eno, Velvet Underground. It's just such a great movie, and it's a no-brainer, but it's just so much fun. And you couldn't find a better band to apply the soundtrack to that than the Ramones. It's perfect.
The end of that when the Ramones storm the school and then they blow up the high school. That's like one of the greatest things in movies.
Oh, that also reminds me. Alice Cooper, School's Out, yeah, it is one of the greatest things. It's such a great film. I just love it so much.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in years. Jeez.
Yeah, it's great. It holds up nicely. I watch it. It's one of those movies I play like every year or so, just because it's so
just
good.
gives you warm fuzzies.
And if I'm not mistaken, producer Roger Corman was he wanted it to be a disco soundtrack originally.
He did.
Wow.
He did. I remember that.
Imagine if he got his way with that, huh?
Yeah.
Ramones won out.
Well, they were out there recording with Phil Spector at the time, so I guess it all worked out very nicely. My next one is, gee whiz, I have so much here. I'm gonna have to go with Gummo. Okay, Gummo, I don't like all the songs, but again, they just fit so well with the movie. I love Sleep. I love I Hate God. It's great in those movies, that opening scene where you see the kids riding bikes and they're playing Sleep. That's so great. But the movie is kind of uncomfortable, and it's about, poor, destitute metalheads. There's a lot of metalheads like in there, and the music is uncomfortable. There's Burzum, a lot of black metal, Bathory, Ryan, I forget the name of this band. Niflheim.
Yeah, it's a pretty sick underground metal soundtrack. Like,
yeah, it's great.
Astoundingly, like, wow, that's when I first heard it. I heard the soundtrack before I saw the movie, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, this is like somebody knows their shit who put this together. Like, really knows their shit. Then I saw the movie. I'm like, okay, it's like you said, weird and uncomfortable, but
yeah, it is uncomfortable. There's definite uncomfortable moments, and I think the soundtrack is perfect for that. And let's see, my next one is going to be that's 3, correct?
Yep, that's 3.
Yeah.
Then move on. Because I could go on forever. Go ahead, move on.
Go ahead, Craig, you're up next.
Okay. My first pick is a movie that is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and so I went with 1994's Clerks from Kevin Smith. Has a lot of fun songs on it, like Chewbacca and Berserker, and the theme to Clerks by Love Among Freaks, and Alice in Chains doing Got Me Wrong, which turned up on their SAP EP, Corrosion of Conformity, Jesus Lizard, a couple of good covers of Go Your Own Way and Shooting Star. So it's really fun. Plus, there's little snippets of the movie interspersed in between the songs with lines like all Jedi had was a bunch of Muppets and and things like that. Although I wish they had the scene where they talked about the uncompleted Death Star was built by non-union stormtroopers, and they were killed as a result of a war that they had nothing to do with. But anyway, that my fifth pick was Clerks. My number four is I don't have a physical copy of it, but is a movie that is truly terrible, and of course it spawned three sequels, and that is 1986's Iron Eagle. Uh, it's not a, and which is actually it preceded 1986's Top Gun, so it's not a ripoff of Top Gun, although Iron Eagle is
Louis
pretty
Gossett?
terrible. Yes,
Lou
yeah,
Gossett Jr. Yep.
I
yeah,
remember that.
they probably should have taken his Oscar away from him as a result of doing these movies.
It would be fair. It'd be fair.
But the soundtrack does include a handful of some really good songs. One of which is Queen's One Vision, which turned up on their A Kind of Magic album and was a big part of their Magic tour in 1986. A good rock song after a few years of doing a lot of synth tracks. You have what the hell was the other one? Helix, Canadian band with a non-LP song called "It's Too Late." Not on any of their albums. Good melodic rocker. And you have Dio had a song called "Hide in the Rainbow," which was not on any of his albums at the time. It sounds like it would have fit in perfectly onto Sacred Heart, and quite frankly, it's better than a few of the songs on Sacred Heart, and it probably should have been on that. There's also a truly awful, so well, the video is more awful, and that is by King Cobra. That's Carmine Apice's band from 1985. The song is called Iron Eagle, Never Say Die. If you really want a good laugh in your day, pull up the video for this and watch it. It is laugh out loud awful. And especially the song itself is kind of like one of those mid 80s training montage type songs like that you would hear like in Rocky IV or something like that. But it's truly abysmal. And yeah, Lou Gossett Jr. is actually in the video for King Cobra's Iron Eagle.
He's earning his paycheck for that movie.
Definitely. There's also a couple of really super 80s songs by Eric Martin, pre Mr. Big, and from John Butcher, Axis, which again sounds like a training montage song that's gone awry. But the Iron Eagle soundtrack has some cool songs on it from 1986. My third pick is also from 1986 and is also the soundtrack to a truly terrible movie, and that is ACDC's Who Made Who, which is the soundtrack to Maximum Overdrive, the Stephen King movie. I had this on cassette as a kid. This was maybe the second or third ACDC album that I bought at the time. And throughout the whole year, all the years, ACDC never put out a proper greatest hits album. And this had three new songs on it, only one of which had vocals, and that's the title track, Who Made Who. There's two other instrumental songs on here that are used throughout the movie, and the version on this of Shake Your Foundations from the Fly on the Wall album is slightly different from the version that's on the album. So those four songs make it, if you're a completist for the AC/DC catalog, to buy this. But it also includes For Those About to Rock and You Shook Me All Night Long. So for casual fans, it's pretty good. Incidentally, AC/DC also did the soundtrack to Iron Man 2, which is also sort of a best of for them. That one has a few of the usual suspects on it, like Highway to Hell and Back in Black, but then they actually go a little deeper on that and have songs like Guns for Hire and If You Want Blood, You Got It, Rock and Roll Damnation, Evil Walks, and even Cold Hearted Man, which is one from the Australian version of Powerage. So that one, again, any self-respecting AC/DC fan already has these songs, but for a casual fan, the Iron Man 2 soundtrack is a nice pickup if you like your AC/DC. So those are my first three.
Cool. Ralph.
Actually, yeah, I had that too.
All right, I think I got it working.
Hey,
There we
Loud and
go.
clear.
All right, yeah, I can hear, and I got the headphones. It's really clear in my head. But all right, so I've been going back and forth between River's Edge and Over the Edge.
You
But,
stole mine, Ralph.
I love Over the Edge because the movie is just one of my favorite movies as a teenager.
Crazy.
I was a juvenile delinquent, and this movie really spoke to me. Matt Dillon's debut got Cheap Trick, got like three songs on here, and every time I've heard Surrender since this album has come out, I think of this movie. I cannot hear that song and not think of this movie. The Cars, Van Halen, You Really Got Me. I'm reading the Tone Chaser book right now about Eddie Van Halen. In the book, they talk about how they wrote the song "Light Up the Sky" for this movie, but instead they saved it for Van Halen 2, and they used "You Really Got Me" instead. And then Jimi Hendrix, Ramones, Teenage Lobotomy, and Valerie Carter, "Ooh Child" at the end of the movie. Like, it's so perfect. They're all on the bus getting like reform school or whatever, and it's a great fucking movie. I love this movie. But I'm actually going with River's Edge over this one because that's got Fate's Warning, Howl's Eve, 4 Slayer songs, Agent Orange, and the Wipers. And it's great how it's used in the movie. It's like when they get in the car and they start the car, they're going like in Demons. Sometimes when the music comes on, it's almost like a music video, like blasting like the whole song kind of. And it's like I just think it fits in better in certain movies than others the way they use it. All right, so my number 3 is River's Edge though for that. And then I guess I'll go with Return of the Living Dead. Number 2, here's the old big box. I got the Blu-ray and I got the soundtrack on cassette. I wish I had this on vinyl. This is such a cool looking vinyl. You got the Cramps, you got 45 Grave with Party Time, TSOL, Rocky Erickson, and The Damned. Just a great, the music fits in perfect in this. When that zombie opens his mouth, says right when they're saying, "Do you want a party?" And they had the video back then, and just really fucking awesome. All right, so that's number 2. And then my number 1, they're kind of connected a little bit. Again, I'm like kind of going to talk about 2 things, but so Davey Gallagher there, he just did on his channel, he did a great interview with Alex Cox, great director, and he did 2 awesome movies with great soundtracks. One was Sid and Nancy, here's the movie and here's the CD, and then the other is Repo Man. But out of these 2, I have to go with Repo Man because the Sid and Nancy soundtrack has no Sex Pistol songs. They got Joe Strummer, the Pogues, Steve Jones, Circle Jerks is on there, and I Want to Be Your Dog performed by Gary Oldman. He also does My Way because he does it in the movie, so that makes the soundtrack. But Repo Man from 1984, Emilio Estevez, you got 2 songs by Circle Jerks. You got Fear, Let's Start a War, The Plugs, Suicidal Tendencies with Institutionalized, Black Flag with TV Party. Iggy Pop does the title track, Repo Man, with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, Nigel Harrison from Blondie, bass player, and Clem Burke, the drummer from Blondie, who was also played short period in the Ramones as Elvis Ramones when he filled in for a short while in 1987. But that movie with Emilio Estevez, he's trying to repo this like car that's it's a lot of science fiction involved with it. It's like a crazy, wacky car that glows in the dark, and when you open the trunk, you get vaporized. But he's also Emilio Estevez, also in Maximum Overdrive,
yeah,
which it's crazy vehicles going around, and I got the
a lot of
CD,
AC/DC in
and
that one. Yeah,
the cassette, and the vinyl.
yeah.
Okay, so, and but yeah, I got to go with Repo Man on that though. That was great. Old California hardcore punk. So that's my 3.
Cool. We got a lot of cool picks tonight. All right, my first choice here is a pretty crappy movie with a pretty cool soundtrack. I remember seeing the movie and thinking it was terrible and bought the soundtrack, and I was like, well, at least they got something right in this movie. That's The Last Action Hero from 1993, Arnold Schwarzenegger. What's really cool about this is it blends like some really cool like 80s like heavy rock and metal heroes with some of the newer bands that are coming up in the scene in the 90s. So you've got, Big Gun by ACDC, really cool song on here. Got two Alice in Chains songs, which both are really good. Where the Hell Have I and A Little Bitter. Then you got this weird kind of like orchestral moody piece by Queensryche and Michael Kamen, which is Real World, which I really dig a lot. Megadeth's got a banger on here called Angry Again. You got a song by Anthrax, Poison My Eyes. Tesla does the title track. And then you got this cool kind of song by Fishbone called Swim. So really, really good soundtrack, crappy movie.
Mm.
So that's my first choice. My second choice from 1994 is the soundtrack to Pulp Fiction,
Oh,
Tarantino. And this is great because it's, Tarantino, kind of like Martin Scorsese, did great job with soundtracks because he pulls in classic songs from all sorts of genres and some songs that you wouldn't expect, but they always kind of like what Ralph said. A great director is one who can pick out songs that fit certain scenes. I mean, you got like Kool and the Gang's Jungle Boogie, which totally fits in the scene that it's in here. You got Let's Stay Together by Al Green. You got Urge Overkill doing a very, very cool version of Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, which is like, it's just so perfect for that scene with Uma Thurman, right? Just really, really good. Son of a Preacher Man by Dusty Springfield. Just soul tracks, rock, surf, all sorts of other genres. Just a great, great collection of songs for this album. But again, it's like you got to watch the movie to really appreciate how good the soundtrack is. And my next choice, I got so many here. Say what you want about this guy, but this is a killer soundtrack, whether you like him or not, or whether you like the movie or not. The movie's no big deal, but Purple Rain by Prince from 1984.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's just, there was a time where I'm like, I didn't really care for Prince all that much, but I always thought this soundtrack was amazing. And
Mhm.
again, one of those instances where the soundtrack is way better than the movie. I mean, Let's Get Crazy, When Doves Cry, Computer Blue, the title track. It's just like, I think almost every song on this album was a hit at some point.
Oh, it was great.
Crazy, crazy good. And, there's guitar all over it. Guys was such a great guitar player. Again, it's funk, it's pop, it's R&B, it's rock, it's like a little bit of everything. So yeah, those are my first three choices for tonight. And Rob, we'll go back to you to finish this all out here.
All right. Well, I'm surprised that nobody picked this one, although I don't have it here with me, but Pink Floyd's Walk.
Oh yeah.
And for me, I saw the movie a couple of times, and I actually saw this. This was the only time I ever saw Floyd. Was on this tour, and Nassau Coliseum. But I love this movie. I love the depth of it and everything, and I love the music. I'm sorry, Lewis. Oh no, he's a fan of this.
Actually,
Yeah.
Lewis is a fan. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody else wasn't a fan of this, but anyway, yeah. So this is probably my number one. I have other ones. Do you want me to do my honorables real quick?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So we were discussing before T2. T2 for me, I know it's not really got heavy metal except for Guns N' Roses, which I don't even like Guns N' Roses, but I like how they integrated the actual metal sound in the soundtrack. If you listen to the movie, it's everything. Dun, 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 it's heavy metal. However you want to look at it, it's metal, and I love the soundtrack. It's one of my favorite soundtracks. Also, this one is too from the first movie. But of late, one of the soundtracks that I really liked and I thought was really good because they use a guitar in it and it's pretty heavy. With Cody Carpenter, the Halloween movie that they did when they what was it about? How many years ago was that, Chris?
2, maybe?
2-3 years. That's
Halloween Ends was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before
3 years ago,
Halloween
I think.
Kills.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever listened to this. It's really good.
No.
It's pretty much the same, but it's heavy. It's very heavy. So anyway, those are my picks.
Cool. Chris?
All right. I didn't bring them, but the other two that I came up with, Rob just mentioned one. My original, the original is one of my favorite films and one of my favorite soundtracks. John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. Carpenter co-wrote it, directed it, and scored it. And you know, it's one of those films. The score is just so powerful. Famously, they ran a rough cut without the Carpenter score, and feedback was terrible. Everybody thought they had a fucking bomb on their hands. It was slow. It was boring. But then when Carpenter added that score, they had the most successful independent film of all time for many years. And yeah, like Ryan mentioned, I also saw John Carpenter in concert, and it was incredible. Something I never thought I'd see. And that's still an amazing score. And yeah, my number one pick, I'm pulling a Catino. It's not rock, but I don't give a fuck. Conan the Barbarian from 1982. From composer Basil Polidoris. It is unbelievable. You know, I've never been in the military, but Jesus Christ, if I ever had to go into battle, I am not playing Slayer or Black Sabbath. I am going to play the score to Conan the Barbarian from Basil Polidoris. It's just the most riveting score ever. I have multiple copies of it, and it is an unbelievable score, and you should check it out. And that's my list.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Should play the
Ryan?
wheel of pain while you're like shoveling snow and doing things
So-
like that, you know, and like
My number 2 is a movie that Chris Allo turned me on to, and I mentioned it before we started, and he forgot.
I
it.
completely forgot about this one.
I get to
Me
pick
too.
it. It is a 1978 movie, which probably not a lot of people have seen, but you should. I think the whole thing's available on YouTube for free.
Yep.
High
It's
quality.
on Blu-ray now. Shockingly.
Yeah, so it's easy to get. It's easy to get. And apparently, it wasn't for years. I don't have a copy in front of me. The movie is called Stunt Rock, and it's just this ridiculous, awesome movie about stuntmen coming up from Australia to make a movie. And who gives a fuck? It's irrelevant. This band from California called Sorcery. I'm sure there's a couple of bands with that name, but this band called Sorcery did the soundtrack, 1978. It's just, if you like great late 70s hard rock, like more of a lo-fi version of like Van Halen at that time without the guitar wizardry. Although the guitar playing is good, but I don't want to paint that picture. But just a great movie, great soundtrack. I love the shit out of it. We saw it in theaters. Chris played it, and then I saw it again a second time. When Chris played it at his thing a couple of years ago, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'm watching this movie like, this is like a billion out of 10. This is fantastic. And then the second time I saw it, I knew what I was getting into, and I still fucking love it.
I didn't. I
oh.
saw it with you. I had no idea. It was the most ridiculous
I
and
loved it.
wonderful thing I had ever seen. It was
It is
great. I was riveted.
And then Chris just mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again. My favorite soundtrack of all time for one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not metal, but who gives a fuck? Because actually, it kind of is, for the reasons he said, is Conan the Barbarian. And yeah, even though it's not metal and it's really orchestral and it's that kind of soundtrack. I play this all the time when lifting weights because it's just it's just that kind of fucking soundtrack. It's so good. And yeah, Basil Polidoris has done many soundtracks to many movies.
Red Dawn,
really
RoboCop.
big. Yeah, some really like big, like well-known movies too. But to me, this will always be his crowning achievement. Is this soundtrack? Yeah, my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And the opening monologue too, which is taken from the movie, from the opening scene of the movie on the soundtrack. It just makes you want to flip tables over. It's not even a metal album, so that's my number one. And I'll do the honorables real quick here. The year on this one, I'm gonna say 1970 something. It doesn't matter. Werner Herzog's version of Nosferatu by the German band Popol Vuh. I'm gonna take it out. The cover for this, the artwork is really, really nice.
Beautiful.
Wow.
I don't like this version as much as the 1922 version of Nosferatu, but that was obviously a silent film,
Agreed,
so
yeah.
there's no original soundtrack with it. This has the Popol Vuh soundtrack. It's not really metal. It's more rock. It's more of like classical chamber music, ambient, but it's the band was kind of associated with the krautrock scene from Germany, so there's your tie-in. Yeah, great soundtrack, great movie, one of my favorite Herzog movies. What
That
else?
soundtrack and the cinematography of that film is what makes that film.
Yeah.
And again, it ties in
It's
very
kind
nicely.
of a slow movie and it's a slow burn, but man, the cinematography and the music going on in the background is just gorgeous.
They
Yeah.
have there's a new one coming out, Nostra.
Yeah, by
Yes.
Roger
Willem
Eggers, who
Dafoe's
did
in it.
The
I saw
Witch.
the
Yeah, it
trailer.
comes out on Christmas Day, I think.
Yeah.
Looks really good.
That's how I feel about Manhattan. The soundtrack and the cinematography save the movie.
It ties it, and even with Conan the Barbarian, like the way it ties it, like the way they tied the songs into the different scenes, it's phenomenal. It takes a good movie and makes it great. But
Right on.
as is often the case, the next one, Karen mentioned it, Gummo, which I like just because I like the bands on it. It's like super underground, great metal. Bethlehem, Absu, I Hate God, Niflheim, Mystifier, Sleep, Electric Hellfire Club,
Yeah,
Bathory.
that was weird.
Just a great. I don't even really like the movie. I only saw the movie twice, and
No, I'm
I
not a
don't
fan
know.
of the movie.
I got no need to watch it again. But I own the soundtrack. I couldn't find it somewhere. Uh, Another one which I think is really cool, fits the movie, not rock and metal, but again, we're kind of off the beaten track here. The Coen Brothers, 2001. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Great soundtrack. It's all like old American roots music and like old bluegrass and stuff, but I love it. And in 2001, I actually went to Radio City Music Hall and I saw the whole soundtrack performed live. I don't remember if it's in order or not, but that's the only time I've seen, nothing to do with the movie. They didn't show the movie behind it. They just played the whole soundtrack and it was fucking great.
Mm.
And my last one is a little unorthodox, but you know what? I think we've been doing Hudson Valley Squares for a while now. And in all that time, I don't think Emilio Estevez was mentioned once. And now he's been mentioned multiple times. I want to mention him again for my last pick. 1994, my favorite movie with Dennis Leary as the villain, Judgment Night. Great
Oh,
soundtrack. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
cool because I don't like, in any other context, a mix of like rap and rock. It's just not my thing. I never liked new metal. I didn't like when Anthrax did it. I didn't like when Aerosmith did it. I didn't give a fuck at any point. But this soundtrack is all collaborations between metal and rock bands and hip hop acts of the day, and I think it works. I even like when they did Slayer with Ice-T covering exploited songs. I like it. Other than that, you got Helmet, House of Pain, Biohazard, and Onyx. Yeah, it's just cool. I just like it. It's the only.
I
What's up?
remember selling that at the Wiz when I was working. That's when I was at the Wiz at the time, and that was a big selling soundtrack.
It's another soundtrack, kind of like Gummo, where it's got really fuck all to do with the movie. Like the movie's cool. I liked it. I remember seeing it. I thought Leary was great. No, it's just a cool kind of like One Night in Hell movie. But soundtrack's really got almost nothing to do with that. But it doesn't matter because it's just kind of its own little thing. It's like aggressively like mid-90s in its own way. But yeah, I like it. Don't like anything else that's like kind of that rap and rock fusion, but I like this, and that's all I got.
Cool.
Oh, one more shit. Fuck. Yeah, damn, Chris mentioned it too. John Carpenter. He did a couple solo albums, but he did an anthology album where he redid the soundtrack or the themes to his various movies with the full band he tours with, which includes his son Cody. There's a bunch of them right there. Yeah, it's very cool. Like his solo albums are very like cinema-esque because that's what he does. But then he did it, so it's all In the Mouth of Madness, Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog, Prince of Darkness, The Thing, They Live, Escape from New York, all classic great movies. Halloween, obviously. Yeah. Big Trouble in Little China. This is really cool. Not really a movie soundtrack, but it kind of is, culled from a lot of different movies. So there you go. That's all. Now that's all I got, I swear.
Liar.
Karen.
Okay, my number 2 is Broken Flowers, Jim Jarmusch's movie Broken Flowers. There's a lot of great songs in here. Sleep is here. Brian Jonestown Massacre. Okay, so you guys know me. That's 2 of my favorite bands right there. Holly Golightly, which I love, bringing that garage rock to it. Marvin Gaye. Then there's the Ethiopian jazz guy, which I have a hard time pronouncing his name. Mulata Astakate, I think. And the soundtrack is full. It's so cool. Has a bit of a lo-fi, cool jazz sound to it. Anyway, any really Jim Jarmusch movie is going to have a great soundtrack. And but this one's my favorite, Broken Flowers. And my number 1 is one that Ralph had already mentioned. It's Repo Man. Fear, Circle Jerks, Black Flag, Iggy Pop, Suicidal Tendencies when they were cool. The movie was so good and it meant a lot to me at the time. I was already getting into punk, but just to see this, like what West Coast hardcore was like and how different it was from what we were experiencing in New York. And just how cool it was, how different it was. And the movie was Alex Cox. It's about aliens, and Harry Dean Stanton is in it. And I could quote that movie, the weirdest quotes back to front. It's just a great movie, meant a lot to me. And so Repo Man's my number one. I'm not gonna go on and on with honorable mentions. I'll just, because a lot of them are already been mentioned, I'm gonna say Team America. This is Spinal Tap. Any Scorsese movie, any Wes Anderson movie, any Jarmusch movie, Belladonna of Sadness. Really, everybody else has kind of tapped into it, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right.
So that's that.
Ralph, was that a Criterion collection of Repo Man that you got?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's like a big sale on it right now. It's like half price because I only had it on VHS, so I ordered it and got it in time for the.
Yeah, I
second
need to
show.
go over to Barnes & Noble to see what they got because I got one
Such
right.
a great movie. Such a great movie.
Craig, what do you got left?
All right, my second one was a totally campy movie, but I've always loved it, and the soundtrack is just totally is like kind of like you're watching the movie. Queen's Flash Gordon.
Oh yeah.
Nicely done.
Always loved this. My brother had this. My brother had this on album. When when I was a kid, and so it's like you'd sit. It was like you were just watching the movie back, because it's not like I had it on videotape, because there's so many speaking interludes of scenes from the movie in this, and a lot of instrumental tracks on this, but it's really cool. But the battle theme and the last track called The Hero are total metal
Hero's
songs.
great.
They both have the same riff, and but they're just really heavy banger songs that Queen did. And Queen even used to open their 1982 concert tour with The Hero, which was really cool to see Freddie Mercury singing that one. So that was my number two. My number one is one of one of my favorite movies of all time, and that with Big Bottom. Big Bottom, talk about bum cakes. My girl's got them, and Spinal Tap. I mean, they're just one of the songs on this are just so catchy and fun, and yet stupid. I mean, with, Hellhole, Tonight I'm Gonna Rock You, Tonight, it's a rock and roll creation.
Wait a minute.
Just,
Fucking Stonehenge.
Where the dewdrops
working on the
cry
sex
and the cats
farm,
meow.
working on the sex farm, trying to raise some hard love. I mean, it's Stonehenge. I mean, just listen to what the flower people say. I mean, just such a fun movie, and the song, all original songs written by the three principal members of Spinal Tap and director Rob Reiner. So it's just a timeless, fun soundtrack. Whenever the songs pop up in the movie, and of course the movie itself with all the classic lines in it are, is timeless.
To 11.
But that was
I hear
Spinal
there's a
Tap.
sequel coming soon.
That's what I was
Yes.
going to ask you guys. I heard there was a
I've heard.
rumor that
They shouldn't do it. They shouldn't do it.
You gotta leave it
For some
alone.
reason.
I
They're too
can't
old.
see it working out too
Yeah.
well
I
for
can't
them,
either. I
It's
can't
been too
either.
long.
My only Spinal Tap's my number one, but my only honorable mention. I don't want to steal this from Count Ralphus, but Saturday Night Fever. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
he's got it. He's probably got it handy, right there. But
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
sound. It's a great soundtrack.
great soundtrack with the Bee Gees, Tavares, Casey and the Sunshine Band. It's just they're songs. A lot of these songs you still hear on the radio, now almost 50 years later. And the movie itself is not as light. If people haven't seen it, it's not as light and airy and dancey as you may think. It's a pretty dark, gritty movie that just happens to have a lot of disco music.
I saw that in the theater at least 3-4 times. I think I remember seeing it with different friends and everything. It was, I like the movie too.
The R-rated version, of course, if you see the PG version, it's not very good, but the R-rated version is the one to see, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
He hits my hair. I work hard on my hair, and he hits
Look
my hair.
She likes the taste of communion wafers.
I just like when he puts the 2 slices of pizza together, one on top
Yeah.
of the other, 'cause he's in a rush. I'm like, that guy's a genius.
That's
While
old
holding a
school.
gallon
That's old
of
school.
gallon
He
of
picks it up
paint.
at the window.
He was
You
living in the
have to go
future
in.
already.
I'm hungry for 2 slices, but I only got 5 minutes to eat it. So
That's
put
it.
them together. Doom. Done.
Brilliant. Yep.
All right, Ralph, you got any left?
Yeah. So Penelope Spheres is known for her Decline of the Western Civilization Part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I didn't want to include any of these things because these were more like documentaries, but I got the soundtrack final for Part 2, the Metal Years. But in 1983, she made a movie called Suburbia. It is a classic movie.
Yeah.
I got the old VHS, and throughout this movie, it's about these like homeless kids. They all band together and they squat in like a house, abandoned house. They call themselves the Rejected, and they go to concerts in between, like stealing food and stuff throughout the movie, and just being kind of juvenile delinquents. But it shows kind of like the violence of the scene in the California hardcore punk scene back then. And you get live performances by Di. They do Richard Hung Himself, which Slayer goes on the cover. TSOL is on for 2 songs, Wash Away and Darker My Love, and Slayer covered them too. And then the Vandals do 2 songs on this. But it's just a great movie. Has a lot of crazy scenes in it, and some of them are like when they're at the concerts and getting into fights and stuff. But then a bunch of my ones is like the Doors soundtrack. Got like the Velvet Underground in there, but it's mainly the Doors. Like I didn't put like Pink Floyd The Wall because I was thinking about it. It's pretty much like the album. There is a couple extra songs that are put on the soundtrack. I have a 7-inch with some of those songs, but a couple of these other ones like Hard Rock Zombies have some songs. Strangeland, Dee Snider's Strangeland. They got like Crisis and Bile and a bunch of cool stuff in there. Detroit Rock City with the Kiss stuff on there. Tenacious D getting that one Dio song that's not on anything else, and he did just for the movie. Lord of Chaos. It's they couldn't get the rights for Mayhem to use their music, but they got some cool black metal stuff on there. And Trick or Treat with Ozzy and Gene Simmons in the movie, and I like Fastway does like the soundtrack, you know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I have the CBGB's one. The movie's not that good, but there's some good stuff on there. It's funny because they put like a Joey Ramone CD a song on there from his solo album that was like, and it's supposed to be in the 70s, and it like that album came out in like 25, 30 years later, you know.
That movie is blasphemy.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It's
pretty
so
silly.
bad.
Had to watch it though, and as I started thinking, like you could go with the Runaways album and I mean movie, and so many documentaries and movies like that. You really could go on and on with this, but
Oh yeah.
try to keep it under control.
Who mentioned Michael Kamen? Somebody
I
mentioned
did.
He,
this.
Oh
This
yeah,
is another one.
Lethal Weapon. Yep.
Lethal Weapon with Eric Clapton and David Sanborn.
Yep.
I love that soundtrack, especially that scene when Mel Gibson's got the gun in his mouth and he's going through that pain and everything. The music on that, it was pretty heavy, you know. But you can hear Eric playing that real like bluesy, and I just love that soundtrack too. It's another one.
Yeah, Kamen did a lot of soundtracks right around.
Oh,
that
yeah.
time. I don't know how much he's doing anymore these days, but
He's getting old, yeah.
yeah, for a while there, he was involved in quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
All right, what do I got left here that hasn't already been mentioned? Well, I'm going to pick a Scorsese film because it's on my list, and most of his have great soundtracks. But does it get any better than Goodfellas?
Mhm.
I mean, you know,
Take an
so
argument
many-
for Casino.
Casino, yeah.
Casino too. Yeah, you know, and even we can go all the way back. Mean Street's got
Yeah.
great ones too. But I mean, Goodfellas is so many great period classics, and
Yeah.
again, like every song is perfectly placed in the scene, so you remember the
Exactly.
scene and you remember the song that's playing. I mean, you know, "Sunshine of Your Love" by Cream, perfectly placed. Got Layla, Derek and the Domas, that whole scene where like after the big heist and how they start bumping everybody off, right? The song is so long as it is, and they just show you
Yeah.
each character as they're offed by you know, Jimmy and whoever. So very, very cool. You know, you got Bobby Darin's in here, "Walking in the Sand" by the Shangri-Las. Great songs. And what's really weird about this film is that when you're watching the movie, there's a million great songs in the film, but only like maybe 30% of them actually made the soundtrack album. which is
I
really
believe
sad.
it.
I'm sure it was a rights thing maybe, but there's so many great songs on in the film that aren't even on the soundtrack album, but whatever. And then I also picked Saturday Night Fever, which I think is a great soundtrack, probably one of the best ever. Just so many great tunes on there, so good.
Oh,
And
yeah.
very underrated film too, I might say. But I wanted to finish with a band who's got 4 really good soundtracks. Probably most folks forgot about these because they're from the 60s. But how about a little band, maybe you heard of them, called the Beatles?
I had that on my list, Pete.
I've heard of them.
Help,
I should have kept it
Yellow
on.
Submarine, and
Yeah.
Magical Mystery Tour. All basically soundtrack albums to, crappy movies, cartoons, whatever. It's like, I don't think anybody really cared. Everybody just they wanted so much of the Beatles, right? So it's like, well, do a movie. Okay, we'll do a movie. We'll put some songs together for it. We'll put out an album. We'll put out an EP, whatever. And they did quite a lot of them over the score of a
I
couple.
remember when they they put Yellow Submarine, it was on TV on Channel 7. I remember as a kid.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That's the
Day's
only
Night,
one of those
too.
I've ever seen was Yellow. Of all those movies, I've only seen Yellow Submarine.
We used
I
to
got
sing
Hard
that
Day's
in
Night
music.
on
We used
DVD.
to
Fact,
sing that in music
Ringo just
class.
turned 84 yesterday.
That's
Yep.
great, right? God.
We used to sing Yellow Submarine in music class. I remember when I was in like elementary school, the teacher would play that on the piano, and all the kids had the words to it. And yeah.
Yeah, why not, right? Good stuff. So there you have it, everybody. Some of our favorite soundtrack albums. So down in the comments below, add in some of yours. I'm sure there's many that we didn't pick, right? Because
There's a ton of them.
there's a ton of them. There's so many
Hundreds.
more. So it'll be cool to see what everybody comes up with down in the comments section. So get to work, put those in down below, and we'll see you next time here on the Hudson Valley Squares. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together.
All the damn time.
All the day.
Hold in time.
See you in 2 weeks here with the Squares. Till then, enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. For Count Ralphus, Craig Kaminsky, Karen LaPreziosa, Ryan Scott, Chris Allo, and Rob Lasante, IMP Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow with more stuff. Take care. Bye-bye.